right. Good afternoon, Lola. Are you on?
Yes, I'm here. Let me put my video as well. How are you?
Excellent. All right, there we go. All right. Good afternoon. We are joined by, as mentioned by Lola Castro, who is WFP's regional director for Southern Africa. She's joining us from Rome, and she's joining us because she was with David Beasley in his recent trip to southern Madagascar. And we thought, as our efforts to keep a light on the situation there, we thought we'd invite Lola. So please, if you have some few comments, and then we'll take some questions, and we'll leave it at that. Please, go ahead.
Yep. Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, everybody. As you very well said, we just, in fact, landed Saturday from southern Madagascar, and what did we see there? Maybe just to be a little bit pictorial, what we are seeing in southern Madagascar is like the impact of climate change at its worst. We have had 5 years of consecutive drought in this area. People are losing their livelihoods, and we are really seeing them in a desperation moment. And this, in fact, is people who have contributed nothing to climate change. This is a place in the world where there is no industries, no contamination, no pollution. These people are living with the basic things. So the situation there is really dramatic, I would say. Since September 2020, both the government and United Nations were warned that there are very strong pockets of food insecurity and malnutrition. And we have been going to these regions, Ambosari, Ambobombe, Ampani, to really try to mitigate the situation. Unfortunately, I must report, we have managed to do something, but we haven't managed to stop the deterioration of the populations. What we are seeing now is a large amount of people. In fact, the last assessment from the UN tell us 1.3 million people will be food insecure from September, and 1.1 million are food insecure now. And the worst part is that we are looking at 28,000 people who will be in IPC5 of catastrophe. And this IPC5 of catastrophe, this is the only country in the world without conflict that has an IPC5. So basically, we have people on the verge of starvation, and there is no conflict. There's just climate change at its worst, affecting them badly. So what did we see there? We were in Ambobombe and surrounding Ambobombe, which is in the south of Madagascar, and there were hundreds of people who have flocked to the urban areas and to wherever they can be assisted. Basically, we can call them climatic displaced. They have moved already, and they have. The women were telling us we have sell our lands and our houses, and we don't have cattle anymore. And now we are just basically holding to the pots and pans to be able to cook something, and some were selling them as well in the market. So basically, we have seen a very high levels of severe malnutrition. There were hundreds of kids in their bones and skin, and they are receiving nutritional support to rehabilitate fast. But they told also to us that many people they cannot arrive to these places because they are too tired and too unable to walk. So really a very dramatic and desperate situation. And while we aim to reach around 700,000 people in the coming month, what we are having is a very big constraints that are related to the far distance locations where these people are, the logistics, the funding is a big constraint here, and we haven't managed to provide these people with 100% of the kilocalories of food they need to be able to rehabilitate and have a normal life. And that is very, very worrisome at this moment, because the worst is about to come. And what these people told us is that they have never seen what we saw this year in southern Madagascar, the thunderstorms that were of Sahelian proportions. Basically, like the haboob we see in the Sahel was blowing in southern Madagascar from the dunes in the coast into inland, and they buried the harvest and the crops, the meager crops they had. And then the drought came and no rain came. And then when a bit of rain came during the cyclonic season, very small, I must say, and some green came up, the locusts have occupied the area. And on top of it, we have the fall armyworm that has become chronic also in this region. So basically, really, the situation is quite dramatic, and what is very clear for the whole UN, for the whole international community, is that rapid action is very necessary. And we work with the government as well to ensure that not only rapid action, but also building resilience and mitigate the effects of climate change in this group of people who are suffering and suffering really dramatically now. So let me leave it here and maybe leave more space for questions and comments, because I think that's the best way we can interact. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lola. Edie Letter, Associated Press.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association, welcome and thank you for doing this briefing. You said the worst is about to come. What kind of numbers are you projecting that we could see? Are you projecting deaths from famine? And could you also tell us about the humanitarian appeal for Madagascar? What is it, and what percentage has actually been given? Thank you.
Please go ahead, Lola.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for your very good questions. Look, it's very difficult to say the worst is to come because it's already really bad. It's horrible. Look, I've been 28 years with United Nations, and I can tell you I've never been back in the field, in the four continents. I've only seen something similar once. And this was in 98 in Southern Sudan, what is today South Sudan, in Bahr el Ghazal famine. When you see hundreds of people who are wasted, and they are not only children, but also the adolescents and the adults, you know something is very wrong. You know something is sometimes maybe irreversible for many. I will not attempt to tell you how many people are dying or how many people died already, because it's extremely difficult. There are no statistics. The infrastructure is very poor. The roads are almost non-existent, and the people are in far distance locations. So let me not go there. And I will not use the term famine because we don't have that data neither. But what I can tell you is that we have been calling a pre-famine-like condition, and we would like to call it like that. And in the IPC format of the United Nations food security teams, we call it the catastrophe. And it's when there is nothing else, you cannot further deteriorate. This is an IPC 5. We have people, 28,000 people in IPC 5, and 510,000 people, 500,000 in IPC 4, who very, very rapidly could fall in IPC 5 if we don't manage to give at least 100% of the food they require to live every day. These people are basically eating cactus, eating leaves, and it's not like they eat that as a complement to their diet. That is their diet. They're only eating that unless they get something from outside. And I tell you, those cactus and those leaves, I mean, these are animal feed. And people are eating that raw and cooking, and this is the only thing. It was really, really bad. On the appeal, thank you for the question. The United Nations and the government of Madagascar are launching a flash appeal, and they are launching it in few days. The previous one got very low traction, and this is one big problem Madagascar has. The isolation of the island, the lack of flights, the lack of visibility is bringing us to this situation where we're coming to the world to explain what we have seen, the ones who have managed to go there. Our teams have been on the ground all the time. We have offices, 4 offices in the south of Madagascar World Food Program. And they have been reporting this and sending very difficult images since September 2020. So basically, I will not say it's too late, but for many probably it's too late. The new appeal is going to be around $155 million, and we hope they will have much more traction than the previous one. And we really expect that it will come out in 1 or 2 weeks latest. So thanks for your questions.
Thank you. James Bays, Al Jazeera. James?
Yes, thank you for doing this. You are obviously dealing with the immediate problems of what you've described as a catastrophe. But as you know, this is an important year for climate negotiations. Could you tell me what you would say to world leaders after what you have seen in Madagascar?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I think I will put it in the words of my executive director that very eloquently have said, these people have contributed nothing to climate change, and they take the whole burden of climate change as we are. So I think for the leaders, it's like, can we try to mitigate now this problem to really solve this immediate problem, because this is hunger and starvation. But at the same time, can we invest much more in trying to, for immediate and long-term support, for these people to have adequate sources of water, for these people to be able to change behavior and not simply plant maize, but also sorghum, cassava, and millet that will be able to be more drought resistant. So that will require big investment for the dunes to be stabilized so they don't blow on the harvest. All that could be done through resilience activities and projects. So there is need to invest in these places. But in fact, I hope we are not too late for that investment, but we need to invest much more now on this, on the mid and long term, for these people to have a life and livelihood in these areas so badly affected by climate change. I think as we go to the COP, that will be the message. And it's quite amazing because Southern Africa is really extremely affected by climate change. We are seeing the two coins of the two sides of the coins. We have seen in 2019 these massive cyclones that affected millions of people that entered through Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Malawi, Comoros. And now we are seeing the other side, huge droughts that are permanent and making the lives of people impossible almost in some areas. So really, a lot more have to be done, more investment in these areas and working with the communities for them to find the new strategies that they can adapt to and they can use to survive in the years to come. If not, the displacement is not going to be just to the urban areas inside the Grand Sud. They will go somewhere else at the end of the day.
Thank you. Toby Burns, Japanese television NHK.
Thank you. Toby Burns with NHK. After 5 years of drought, can you tell us a little bit more about the agricultural prospects for Madagascar? You touched on this a little bit, but how can we expect the situation, if properly handled, to improve? And then also phase 5, IPC 5 is famine, correct? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let me start by the last one. IPC 5 is not famine. Famine is an indicator that is different. IPC 5 means that the people are in a limit situation and it's called catastrophe. Yeah. So it's not famine. The famine is another indicator that measures how many people died per 10,000 in a location. And as I said before, we don't have those figures. So we cannot call it. Yeah, it's a technical nuance, but it's very important. Yeah. So thanks for that question. In relation to the harvest, FAO reported that the harvest is mostly lost this year. I mean, the last rains didn't come. So again, no harvest, and also with the sand blasting of and covering of the fields, and also pastures, because they have cattle and there was no pastures as well. And they estimate that it will be less than 40% the previous harvest. And now we are going to the season where people will plant. Some rains may come during the rainy season, and then in March, April 2022, they may have a harvest. But the prospect or the forecast is that there will be very few rain, and also the people have sold everything, including some land, and have displaced themselves. So they will not be able to plant, and they will need seeds eventually to plant with the ones who have kept their land, so they will be able to plant. Now the idea, as we discussed before, is that we need to continue, and we have been working a lot with FAO and IFAD on this one, to continue trying to change the behavior and plant much more of the drought-resistant crops, as well as to get cattle that is more drought-resistant as well in the region. And that has been going on for a number of years, but we haven't reached everybody and not everything. But cassava, just to call a little success in this region, cassava has been planted much more, and groups of women are not only planting and producing and collecting the cassava, but also transforming it in flour, and that flour is sold in the markets locally, etc. So that's a good example of much more of this could be done to solve this problem, and also relates to the previous question. Thank you. So hope I replied it.
Thank you. Maggie from Voice of America, Margaret Bashir.
Hey, thanks, Ms. Castro. Thanks for doing this briefing. A question on the markets. I'm sorry, my internet dropped out for like a second, and I think I heard you say the word market when it came back up. But food in the markets. Is there food in the markets, or people just can't afford it anymore? Or is there actually no food in the markets then, or very little because the crops have failed? Thanks.
Yeah, no, good question, Margaret. Thank you for that. Look, you have some food in the markets. However, the south of Madagascar is the only place in our region where we are seeing the same effect as the global food prices. The prices have increased 30% over the last month. So basically, when you have people destitute without assets that have to sell their spoons and their pans to be able to buy something, if the prices are already, even the basic food commodities like it will be the maize meal or rice, that is basically the staple diet without going into any protein, whatever, it's already 30% more expensive than in a normal time. They will be able to afford very, very small amounts of food. And then the markets are not functioning very well. And in fact, that has been one of our challenges, because in this region, we do a mix of food and cash. Because if there is local production, we try to promote that we provide as well food program cash-based transfers. So we buy locally, we encourage the people to buy locally. But at this moment, we are shying away from cash-based transfers, because if we inject too much money, we may create additional inflation in these markets. So it's a very complicated situation. Look, southern Madagascar has also very long supply chains. Well Food Program, we're specialized in moving food. But this, between COVID, lack of containers, shipping lines being much slower, problem of customs, we're taking 3 to 4 months to ship anything to southern Madagascar, even from as close as Durban port in South Africa. So it's a very long supply chain. And then once they arrive in the ports of Toliara or Port Dauphin, that are the south ports, it takes days and weeks to move it because of the poor infrastructure in the south to the locations where this population lives, to the Ampanis, the Ambosaris, the Ambobombes, the Kili, etc. So really what we're looking here is a very long supply chains, markets being depleted, inflation and market prices already seen as high as 30% above the normal 5-year average. This is what we're seeing now. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Could I just ask you a follow-up, Ms. Castro? Why isn't the Malagasy military helping move internally? I assume they have one. So why wouldn't they be helping you move things internally? Because I know you had said previously also that the roads are a bad situation. So can't they help?
The government is doing their food distributions as well, and I think they are counting with the military. But World Food Program, we are doing the humanitarian piece, and we are not using military. We're using our private sector transporters. It's simply a matter of roads being very difficult. Trucks are there, they take time. And boats are there, they take time. Vessels are there, they take time.
Thank you. Morin Picard, Le Figaro, Morin?
Yes, Mrs. Castro, can you hear me? All right. I may have missed this in your presentation, but with all the things happening in southern Madagascar right now, the lack of infrastructure, does the WFP expect or fear a massive exodus towards the north or the regional towns you just mentioned, Toliara and Fort Dauphin? Thank you.
Merci. To be honest, what we are seeing already is a move from the rural areas to the districts or provincial capitals, Ambobombe, Ambosari, Ampani, and also to some of them in Fort Dauphin or Toliara, closer they are moving there. So we see massive, to be honest, I cannot project or predict. But also what we are seeing is that people are extremely weak. And people told us that just to come to the nutritional center in Ambobombe, some of them had to walk between 2 to 7 hours. We talked to different people. And as they don't have so much cattle and they normally move with ox carts. That is becoming increasingly difficult for people to move. So for people to move long distance in the actual situation without money and without proper transport is going to become increasingly difficult. This is why we have to go much farther away and to try to reach to the people much farther away.
Great.
Thank you.
Lola, thank you very much for this. Please do keep us posted on the situation as it evolves, and we'd always be happy to welcome you back. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that opportunity. Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
And to those of you here, we're going to take a pause because Geir Pedersen is ready, and I don't want to compete with him because I know I'd lose. So we'll go down to the stakeout, and then we can come back here for the rest. And for those of you online, you can watch the stakeout on Web TV.